We never asked you to be born smart, Alexis. You should have known your education would cost this family more than just tuition. That was the moment. The moment I stopped being their daughter and became their scapegoat. It was a Tuesday evening, gray skies, windless air, and the kind of silence in the house that made even the floorboards uneasy. I was seated at the dinner table, holding a letter from the Department of Education. The number screamed louder than my heartbeat. $127,842.19, past due. My hands trembled. Mom, what is this? She didn't look up from her wine glass. Dad's fork clinked against his plate like nothing had happened. But everything had. I was 24, freshly graduated with a double major in finance and psychology. I had never taken out a single loan. I had full scholarships. I knew this. I was meticulous, disciplined, focused. But there it was, in black ink and soul-crushing digits, a debt I never signed for. Don't play stupid, Alexis, Dad said finally, leaning back with that worn-out belt still looped through his jeans, his voice thick with accusation. You've always been dramatic. Dramatic? I inhaled sharply. I never took this loan. My signature, this isn't mine. This is fraud. And that's when Mom laughed. A soft, poisonous laugh. I used your name because we needed it. Your credit was clean. You owe us that much. You owe us. 3 words that cracked something permanent inside me. All these years I had done everything to make them proud. Top of my class. Never drank. Never partied. Even sent part of my internship stipend home. Because we were struggling. Because families sacrifices together. But they had made me a sacrifice. I was 19, I whispered. When you did this. Exactly, Dad cut in. An adult. You should have kept track. My mouth fell open. The betrayal settled in my bones like winter. They'd stolen my name, my future, and now they were blaming me for the storm they created. You're making this a bigger deal than it is, Mom said, taking another sip. The payment is due next month. You have a job now. You can handle it. I could barely breathe. You destroyed my credit before I even used it. Dad slammed his palm on the table. You should be grateful we didn't lose the house. Grateful? You mean my name saved the house? I snapped, heat rising up my spine. And now you want me to pay for it? No response. No apology. Just the sound of betrayal echoing in the silence. I stood up, chair scraping the wooden floor, breath unsteady. And that's when Mom dropped the final match on the dry grass of my trust. You think this is abuse? Try growing up in our shoes, Alexis. We did what we had to. You're still living under our roof. Maybe you should start showing some respect. And just like that, I realized they didn't see what they did as wrong. To them, I was the selfish one. The ungrateful child who owed them everything. The walls of our suburban house in Decatur never felt so unfamiliar. Suddenly, every family photo looked like evidence of manipulation, of financial grooming, of love with conditions. I packed my bags that night. No plan, no backup, just rage, disbelief, and a need to breathe air that wasn't laced with guilt. As I reached the door, Dad said quietly, "If you walk out, don't expect to come back." I turned. Calm now. Wounded but awakening. I won't come back. But one day, you will need me. And when you do, I will remember this. I was living in a friend's garage, juggling 2 jobs and showering at the YMCA. I couldn't rent an apartment. My credit was ruined. Employers asked about the loans in background checks. The scholarship I had worked my entire teenage life for, swallowed whole by their debt. Still, I didn't go public. Not yet. I held the truth like a blade I wasn't ready to swing. But then came the call. "Alexis," Mom sobbed over the phone. "They're garnishing our wages. They're threatening to foreclose. You have to help us." That moment, the universe gave me back the very silence they drowned me in. I didn't answer her. I recorded the call. And that was the day I stopped being the broken daughter and started becoming the woman who would take her name back. This story isn't just about financial ruin. It's about how the people who gave me life used it against me. How they broke me with signatures and smothered me with guilt. But it's also about rising, louder, bolder, and unforgiving. They called it survival. I call it theft. And I'm not just telling the story. I'm owning it. Because silence protected them long enough. This is just the beginning. You never forget the sound of your own mother crying. But after a while you learn to tell the difference between grief and guilt. That night, when she called begging for help, something inside me didn't move. Not even a flicker. I had nothing left for her. Not compassion. Not empathy. Just a cold memory of what it felt like to be betrayed in my own name. 3 months. That's how long I had been out of that house. 3 months of rejection letters from landlords. 3 months of HR departments reconsidering after seeing my credit report. 3 months of sleeping under a plastic roof in my friend Tasha's backyard garage, next to tools, spiders, and dreams I once thought were invincible. But pain will sharpen you. I was working as a waitress by day and tutoring online by night. Every dollar was sacred. I'd started reading into identity theft cases in my spare time, not to heal, no, that came later, but to understand how they did it. My parents. My own flesh and blood. I needed proof, not just emotion. Because what they did wasn't just betrayal, it was criminal. One night, after my shift at Maple and Rye Cafe, I got a notification. Your Experian report has been updated. Something told me to open it right away. And there it was. A hard credit pull from Brittany Hall and Company dated 3 years ago. I froze. Brittany Hall, that name wasn't unfamiliar. She was Mom's best friend. Godmother to my little cousin. Real estate agent turned family accountant. She used to braid my hair in the living room while sipping boxed wine with Mom on Sunday nights. I still remember her saying, "Alexis is gonna make it big one day. Don't mess that up, girl."
She did.
Brittany had helped them get the loan. Used her credentials. Masked the process with just enough legalese and lies to make it look like I had applied. I looked through old emails Mom had forwarded me in college, documents to sign that she said were for health insurance and tax forms. One of them matched the date of the loan application. They'd used my trust as a trap. I printed every file, highlighted every timestamp, and the more I uncovered, the less I recognized the people who raised me. It wasn't just one loan. There were 2, then 3. One in my name, one in my social security number, and one attached to a fake business registered as Monroe Learning Group LLC. They'd created a fake business using my name. And the worst part? They defaulted on all 3. October 20th, I walked into the bank wearing my rage. I made an appointment with the loan officer at First Grove Bank, the institution where the biggest loan was taken. I showed up in a black blazer I borrowed from Tasha, my natural curls pulled into a bun, folder in hand like a woman who didn't come to beg, but to reclaim. "Good morning, ma'am," the banker said politely. "How can I help you?" I slid the folder across the desk. "I'm here about a fraudulent loan taken out in my name 3 years ago." He raised an eyebrow. "This was submitted through Brittany Hall and Company, yes?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "But I never signed those documents. My parents did. Illegally." He paused. "Your parents?"
Yes.
"I have evidence of forged e-signatures, altered documentation, and an unauthorized business registration." He leafed through the pages, his jaw tightening. "You might want to get a lawyer," he said. "This isn't just fraud. This is felony identity theft. And your credit report isn't the only thing they've damaged. If the IRS sees this business, you might be liable for unpaid taxes." Taxes? Liable? I walked in hoping to fix my name. I walked out realizing I might go down for a crime I didn't commit. I wanted to scream. Not because of the money, but because the betrayal had roots. Roots that were now trying to pull me down with them. Every good memory I had of my childhood was rotting. The time Mom threw me a surprise birthday party in the backyard? Funded with stolen credit. The time Dad fixed my first car? Probably used my name to buy the parts. Everything suddenly felt poisoned. November 1st, the confrontation. I sent them both a certified letter. I didn't text. Didn't call. I wanted it in writing. You have 14 days to admit what you did. Or I go public, with the law, with the family, with the world. No response. So I posted on Facebook. To the family and friends who always asked how I made it out. Here's the truth. My parents stole over $120,000 in loans using my name while I was in college. I had a full scholarship. I never needed debt. They forged my signature, created a fake business, and blamed me when it came crashing down. And for years, I thought I was the ungrateful one. No more. The truth costs more than money. It costs peace, trust, and sometimes family. It went viral in our circle within 24 hours. People were stunned. Some didn't believe it. Others said, I always felt something was off. Even Aunt Cheryl messaged, Baby, you never deserved that. Ever. And finally, Mom called. I let it ring. Then Dad. I didn't answer either. Because healing isn't always a quiet journey. Sometimes, it starts with letting people sit in the mess they made. But revenge? That's a different chapter. I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to rebuild it higher and make sure they watched every inch of it rise. They made me the villain in their story. Now, I'll become the hero of mine. People think revenge is fire and fury. Loud. Explosive. Dramatic. But sometimes, revenge walks into a bank wearing pressed slacks and red lipstick, pulls out a folder of photocopies, and smiles. That was me. The version of Alexis Monroe they never expected to rise from the ashes. Not the obedient daughter. Not the guilt-ridden peacemaker. No. I became the girl who started printing receipts. Tasha's cousin, Devin, was an IRS compliance analyst. Quiet. Blunt. Wore hoodies like armor. When I told him what my parents had done, his mouth barely moved. Wait, they registered a fake LLC with your name and claimed business expenses on it. I nodded. 3 years worth. And never told me. He blinked. Once. Then they're not just in debt. They're in trouble. He offered to help me sort through the mess. Not officially. He wasn't allowed to intervene, but he pointed me in the right direction. Start with your IRS transcript. Get your EIN report. And check your FAFSA logs. People forget FAFSA saves digital fingerprints. I didn't know what half of that meant, but I learned quickly. I was becoming a student again. Only this time, the subject was financial war. It was late. 2:36 a.m. I was hunched over Tasha's fold-up table, digging through pages of IRS transcripts, digital statements, and loan applications. And that's when I saw it. A signature. On a federal loan I never applied for. Signed. Alexis M. Monroe. But the M was written in cursive. I hadn't signed with cursive since I was 14. I printed a copy and pulled out an old birthday card Dad wrote me in high school. His cursive M was identical. He hadn't just enabled the fraud. He forged the signature. Not Mom. Him. The man who taught me how to ride a bike. The man who said, I'll always protect you, baby girl. He forged my name and let me sit in shame while the world thought I was careless. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Not for the money, but because love had become a weapon, and I was bleeding in silence. Her name was Vanessa Clark. Black. Sharp. And not one to play polite with fraud. I found her on a referral list for student loan abuse cases. She looked over my file. Didn't flinch. They committed multiple felonies, she said. Forgery. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Tax fraud. That LLC? That's laundering disguised as desperation. I was stunned. I don't want to see them jailed, I whispered. I just want my name back. She closed the folder gently. Alexis, sometimes reclaiming your name means letting justice speak in a language they can't ignore. Then she smiled. And I speak that language fluently. Vanessa filed a cease and desist against Brittany Hall's accounting firm, demanding records of all communication regarding loans filed in my name. We subpoenaed the 3 banks involved. We contacted the IRS to flag the LLC under a fraud investigation. And most importantly, Vanessa filed a formal complaint with the Office of Inspector General for Federal Student Aid. Everything was moving. And with each letter sent, I felt lighter. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. About refusing to carry the shame for crimes I never committed. My phone started ringing at 6:14 a.m. First it was my uncle, then my aunt in Chicago, then Mom. They all saw the notice of federal investigation on my parents' front door. And suddenly, the family who once called me dramatic wanted to talk.
Mom.
Alexis, what did you do? They're saying we're under audit. What did you tell them?
Dad.
You ungrateful child. You're tearing this family apart. But what they never realized was, they'd already tore it apart the day they signed my name. I didn't answer. I let the voicemail play out like background noise while I stood in line at the DMV to get a new ID. A clean one. No more linked addresses. No more shared history. I was burning the bridge they never thought I'd walk away from. I was offered a position at a corporate consulting firm.
Why?
Because the recruiter saw my viral post on LinkedIn and said, anyone who can organize this level of financial chaos and stay composed under fire is someone I want on my team. From garage floor to glass elevator. First day on the job, I wore navy blue. Tasha walked me to the train. You're a whole force now, Lex, she said. And she was right. Because this wasn't just a comeback. It was a declaration. I received a handwritten envelope. No return address. Inside was a note from Dad. You've embarrassed us. I don't even know who you are anymore. I stared at the paper. I whispered out loud. That's the first honest thing you've said. You don't know me. And you never will again. You see, the receipts always speak. No matter how long they're buried. No matter who tries to burn them. And once they speak, there's no turning back. Some betrayals come in screams, slamming doors, and broken glass. Others arrive in neat white envelopes.
Sealed.
Quiet. Professional. Laced with silence money. That's what I called the envelope sitting on my desk the morning of December 18th. I had just finished reviewing a tax brief for my new consulting firm when the receptionist buzzed. Miss Monroe, someone left an envelope for you. No return address. Said it was urgent. My heart dropped. By now, I knew the pattern. The calm before the gut punch. The illusion of peace before a new wound. Inside the envelope was a check. $20,000. Signed by Brittany Hall's firm. Accompanied by a typed letter. Dear Ms. Monroe, this financial offer is made in good faith and with the intention to bring closure and privacy to all parties involved. Upon cashing this check, you agree to drop any legal complaints filed regarding loans in your name and cease all public commentary related to the matter. We understand your frustration. However, continued legal action will only bring irreversible damage to your family and reputation. Let's end this here, quietly. Quietly. The word made me sick. They wanted to put a price tag on my dignity, on the years of credit destruction, on the job offers I lost, the sleepless nights, the way I had to hide my shame under strength that nearly broke me. $20,000. To forget that the people who raised me sold my name for survival, then blamed me for the fallout. I took the check to Vanessa, my lawyer. Her eyes narrowed. This is hush money. It's their way of admitting guilt without legal consequences. I nodded, silent. You don't need to decide now, she said. But understand, if you accept this, the investigation halts. Forever. They won't face the law. You'll get your money, but not your justice. I went home and sat with it. $20,000 could get me an apartment, pay down a piece of that phantom debt, help me breathe. But what about the next Alexis? The next daughter groomed into silence by guilt and obligation? What about her? I stared at the check until the ink felt like it was burning holes through the paper. I needed answers. Not silence. Not money.
So I called my aunt.
The only relative who had quietly supported me during the storm. Aunt Valerie. I said, can I ask you something honest?
She paused.
Of course, baby. Did you know? About the loans? About what Mom and Dad did? Silence. Then a sigh. I didn't know about the loans, Alexis. But I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how deep it went. I hesitated, heart pounding. There's more, isn't there? She whispered so softly, I almost missed it. Your father's done this before. What? In 2001, he used your mother's cousin's identity to open a credit card, maxed it, never paid it. The family swept it under the rug, said he was just trying to help the household. Sound familiar? My knees went weak. He's a serial fraud, I said, voice cracking. And Mom, she just lets him? She protects him, Lex. She always has. Since they were kids, she was taught loyalty is love, even when that love rots. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of rage, but because I realized something chilling. I was never the first, and I might not be the last. I returned the envelope, untouched, uncashed, along with a letter. Your offer is declined. You don't get to steal my name, crush my future, and then ask me to forget it for 20 grand. My silence isn't for sale. My story will be told. In court, in truth, in public. I posted the same message to my LinkedIn with screenshots of the offer, redacted for legal protection. The post exploded. Victims of financial abuse began messaging me by the dozens. My parents ruined my credit before I turned 20. They used my name to get a car loan. I found out in collections. I never knew this had a name. Financial abuse. Thank you, Alexis. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was starting a conversation no one dared to have. It was 8:03 a.m. I opened it to find a man in a gray suit and wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Monroe? Yes, I'm Agent Linwood, Federal Student Aid Office of Inspector General. We've opened a formal case. Your documentation and testimony were credible, and you're not the only person connected to Brittany Hall's firm. I blinked. There are more victims? He nodded. A trail of them. That moment changed everything, because this wasn't just a family betrayal. It was a pattern, a network, a quiet epidemic of trust being weaponized inside homes.
And I had helped expose it.
Mom texted me,
Please don't do this.
You're destroying our lives. I didn't respond with words. I sent her a picture. It was my new apartment lease.
Signed.
In my name.
Clean.
Independent.
Mine.
And then one sentence. You destroyed mine first. They chose silence. I chose truth. They chose blame. I chose power. And when the courtroom date was finally set, and I stood with Vanessa beside me, head high, tears dry, I felt nothing but clarity. Because even if they never wore orange, even if they never said, I'm sorry, I had reclaimed what they tried to erase. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like in the movies. No shouting. No gavel pounding. No cinematic music. Just cold benches. Paper shuffling. And the two people who brought me into this world, now avoiding my eyes from across the aisle. Mom sat stiffly in a navy blazer, her lips pressed thin like she was chewing on regret. Dad stared at the wall behind the judge like it was more interesting than his own daughter. I hadn't seen them in over 5 months. Not since I'd uncovered the last forged document. Not since they sent hush money instead of an apology. This time, they couldn't spin it. They couldn't guilt me. Couldn't gaslight me into believing I was the ungrateful child. Because I came armed with evidence and years of unspoken pain. It wasn't a criminal case yet, not officially. This was a civil lawsuit to clear my name and formally charge my parents with financial identity theft. Vanessa stood by my side like a blade wrapped in velvet.
Polished. Deadly.
Unshakable. She opened with a line that sliced the room open. This is not a story of financial hardship. It's a story of betrayal masked as family obligation. This is not a misunderstanding. It's identity theft, fraud, and emotional abuse hidden under the word parenthood. My parents' lawyer countered with empathy. Said they were desperate. That they meant no harm. That this was a private family matter that had spiraled into public shame. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Desperation doesn't justify deception. Especially when the victim is your own child. The judge called me to the stand. I walked with slow, deliberate steps. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. I looked at my parents, Mom wringing her hands, Dad finally meeting my eyes. And I said, I was 19. I had a full scholarship. I never needed loans. But they took them anyway, using my name, my social security number, my future. They didn't ask. They didn't tell me. They just took. When the payments were due, they blamed me. Said I was dramatic and selfish. I couldn't rent an apartment. Couldn't get hired for jobs. Couldn't breathe without feeling like I had ruined something. But I hadn't.
They had.
I tried to be quiet. I tried to handle it privately. I even forgave them until they offered me hush money instead of an apology. That's when I realized I wasn't protecting family. I was protecting abusers. The room was dead silent. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. I looked at them one last time. You told me family means sacrifice. You were right. But the sacrifice was always me. And I won't be your offering anymore. The court ruled in my favor. All debts under my name were declared fraudulent. The loans were dismissed. My credit record was cleared. Vanessa filed an additional petition for damages. We're still waiting on the amount. But honestly, I'd already been paid. Not in dollars, but in dignity. My parents didn't go to jail. Not yet. The federal investigation is still ongoing. If it leads to criminal charges, I'll testify. And I'll sleep fine that night. We haven't spoken since the trial. Mom tried to call the next day. I blocked her number. I've learned that closure isn't a door someone else has to open. Sometimes you close it yourself. You walk away. And you heal louder than they hurt you. February 4th, a new chapter. I moved into my new apartment, a high-rise studio with a small balcony that overlooks downtown Atlanta. I signed the lease with my own hand. My name. My terms. Every time I unlock the door, I smile. Because no one can take this from me. I've started a blog, The Name They Stole, where I help other young adults navigate financial abuse. Within 2 weeks, over 11,000 people subscribed. Hundreds sent stories of similar betrayals. One girl wrote, I thought I was crazy. I thought it was my fault. Your story gave me permission to fight back. That's when I knew what they meant to destroy became a platform. What they tried to silence became a movement. But let me be clear. I'm not telling this story for pity. Not for claps. Not for views. I'm telling it because someone out there is drowning in guilt that doesn't belong to them. And they need to know, your love for your family doesn't mean letting them bury you alive.
You can speak.
You can fight. You can walk away and still be whole. To my younger self, I'm sorry no one protected you. But look at you now. You became the protector. The voice. The truth they couldn't bury. This is the end of their version. But it's the beginning of mine. I used to think survival meant shrinking. Keeping the peace. Staying small so others wouldn't feel ashamed. But I've learned survival is speaking. It's choosing your name over their comfort. It's rebuilding what they tried to ruin, brick by glorious brick. And most of all, survival is freedom. I faced them in court, and I walked out not just free, but whole.